Happy Thursday, everybody. Today is July 2nd, 2026, and this is your Friday planning video. Now, before I get started, just a quick reminder that the markets are closed tomorrow in observance of the Independence Day holiday, so there will not be a Friday trading session. We'll be back with the Monday market update on Monday, July 6th. Now, I've met with people with millions of dollars who didn't feel financially independent, and I've met people with far less who felt completely free. That may sound like a strange thing for a financial advisor to say, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot this week as we head into the 4th of July holiday. What does financial independence actually mean? It's a phrase we hear all the time. In fact, if you spent any time reading financial articles, watching financial television, or listening to financial podcasts, you've probably heard the phrase hundreds of times. Financial independence. Sounds straightforward enough until you stop and really think about it. And the more I thought about it this week, the more I realized that independence is one of those words that changes meaning throughout our lives. When I was younger, independence meant freedom. It meant getting my driver's license. It meant earning my own paycheck. It meant not having to ask someone else for permission. Like most young people, I couldn't wait to become independent because I thought independence meant having complete control over my life. Then life happened. You build a career, you get married, you raise children, you take care of aging parents, you develop responsibilities that are bigger than yourself. And somewhere along the way, your definition of independence changes. It becomes less about having no responsibilities and more about having choices. After spending more than 3 decades working with clients and their families, I can tell you that when people reach their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they rarely talk about independence the way they did when they were 25. They aren't talking about staying out late or answering to nobody. They're talking about being able to make decisions on their own terms. They want the ability to choose where they live. They want to choose how they spend their time. They want to choose whether they continue working, travel more, spend time with family, volunteer, or pursue interests they've never had time to do before. What they're really talking about is freedom. And that's why a recent conversation with a client has stayed with me. We were reviewing his financial plan, and at one point, he looked at me and he said, "Randy, I don't think I'm financially independent yet." Now, I've been doing this long enough to know that when someone says that, they're usually comparing themselves to a number. Sure enough, that's exactly what it was happening. He had a target in his mind. There was a certain number he thought he needed to reach before he could officially declare himself financially independent. Until he reached that number, he felt like he wasn't there yet. At first, it sounds perfectly logical. But as we continued talking, something interesting happened. He told me that he was still working, but he admitted he wasn't working because he had to. He enjoyed what he did and he liked the people he worked with. If he wanted to cut back tomorrow, he could. He and his wife traveled several times a year. His children were financially secured. He wasn't worried about paying his bills. He wasn't lying awake at night wondering whether he was going to be okay. As I listened, I remember thinking that the life he was describing sounded remarkably independent, not because of a number, but because of the flexibility he created. A few days later, I found myself thinking about that conversation again. One of the privileges of being in this business for as long as I've been in it is that you start to notice patterns. You realize that people who seem happiest and most comfortable with where they are financially aren't necessarily the people with the largest portfolios. Sometimes they are, but not always. What I've noticed is they tend to be people who have built lives with options. They have flexibility, they have choices, they have room to adapt, and perhaps most importantly, they don't feel trapped. Years ago, I had another client who was approaching retirement. We had worked together for a long time and were finally at the point where everything was lining up. The plan looked good. The income projections looked good. The retirement date was approaching. During one of our final meetings before retirement, I asked him what he was most excited about. I expected him to tell me about travel plans or golf or hobbies. Instead, he smiled and he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "I'm looking forward to not having to do anything I don't want to do." At first, I laughed because it was such an honest answer, but the more I thought about it, the more profound it became. He wasn't talking about money. He was talking about freedom. He wasn't excited about the account balance. He was excited about having control over his time. He was excited about waking up on a Tuesday morning and deciding for himself what that day would look like. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years. People don't really want money. They want what money makes possible. Nobody wakes up hoping for a larger pie chart on a quarterly statement. What they really want is flexibility. They want to know they can help a child if needed. They want to know that they can handle an unexpected expense. They want to know that they can take a trip they've always dreamed about. And they want to know they have choices. Money is simply the tool to do so. The freedom is the goal. That's why I believe financial independence is not a finish line that suddenly appears one day when you hit a certain number. It's something that develops gradually over time. It's built every time you make a thoughtful decision instead of an emotional one. It's built every time you save instead of spend. It's built every time you stay disciplined when everyone else is just reacting. It's built every time you choose long-term progress over short-term gratification. These decisions don't feel dramatic when you're making them, but over years and decades, they create something incredibly valuable. They create freedom. Now, as we celebrate Independence Day this weekend, I think it's worth asking ourselves a different question. Instead of asking, how much more do I need before I feel financially independent? Maybe the better question is, what freedoms have I already created that I didn't have 5 years ago? For some people, the answer might be flexibility at work. For others, it might be the ability to travel. For others, it might simply be the peace of mind that comes from knowing they're on solid financial ground. Whatever your answer is, I suspect it has less to do with a specific number than most people think. Because after more than 30 years of helping people navigate their financial lives, I've come to believe that the best measure of financial independence isn't found on a statement. It's found in the choices you have, the flexibility you've created, and the freedom you've earned. If you'd like to talk about whether your financial plan is helping create the kind of flexibility and freedom that matter most to you and your family, we'd be happy to have that conversation. For now, have a wonderful Independence Day weekend, and I'll see you next week.